RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau slot those guys right into the starting lineup. But beyond that, your guess is as good as mine.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Friday, August 23rd, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is this brand new mobile game, completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost, what's that word? For your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Hey, folks, I want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch of the day. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, as well as all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community. That thing is growing like crazy. We're just about to hit 400 subscribers, members, really, because you don't have to subscribe. You just join. It's free. And what a great time to do it as we get into football season next week. This is the last show before game week. That's so hard to believe. So coming up on the show today, really interesting kind of fun discussions. Number one, conundrum with the starting five for basketball this year, unlike anything I can remember in recent memory. Number two, beyond going to FSU, I don't see an obvious loss on the schedule for Carolina football, but does that mean that 11-1 is a realistic record? I don't know about that, so we're going to try to unpack that. And then I've got a few basketball and scheduling and ticketing updates and the first weekend whip around of the 2024-25 season. Let's get right into it. Okay, when we talk starting five with the basketball team, I feel like every offseason that is the single hottest topic that anyone and everyone wants to debate. Am I right? Do you feel that same way? Like, I feel like when we talk starting five in the Discord, it's like a heated debate. Everyone's in on it and everyone's got opinions. And there's a lot of very valid opinions. I feel like in social media or on message boards or when I talk about it on here, man, people go crazy because it's just such a divisive and fun thing to speculate about. And here's the thing. I usually, like once the roster's set, I usually lock in. I'm like, this is my five right here. That this is who I'm rocking with. And once I get that, I hold firm to it unless there's just like other information or something comes out, whatever it is. But y'all, I have been struggling to lock in on this thing unlike anything I can remember. Let me give you just like I just did a quick search, looked around. I'm sure there's more I could find, but here's just three people's viewpoints on Carolina's starting lineup. Two national college basketball voices and one local. John Rothstein from CBS. And let me give you the date they put this out as well, because I think that's telling. This is a recent, August 11th, so just like 12 days ago. Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis. I'm going to give you 1 through 5 the way they put it. Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Jalen Withers, and Van Allen Lubin. That's John Rothstein's. That's not mine. Don't come at me with your hate mail. Second, Jeff Borzello from ESPN, one of their main college basketball writers. This is from August 5th, so also recent. His starting five for Carolina, Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Cade Tyson, and Van Allen Lubin. And then fifth, this is a more local angle. This is from Rod Baxley of the Fayetteville Observer. This was back on June 20th, though. So just keep in mind that date was a little sooner than the other two. Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Cade Tyson, and Jalen Washington. So there's three different viewpoints on it. And you heard a wild variety of possible starting fives. So not only within myself have I felt more uncertainty and changing my mind than ever before, I feel like we're seeing broadly from various media entities less agreement on Carolina's starting five than anything I can remember in recent memory. And I went back to start thinking about it. I was like, I'll just relook at the Hubert Davis era. You know, I could go way back, but in the Hubert Davis era, I'm trying to put my brain back in past Isaac, but I legitimately think that never, while Coach Davis has been at the helm, have we had this many starting roles feel so open for the taking. Let's go back. First year, heading into 2021-22, feel like Caleb Love was a no-brainer. Feel like Leaky Black was a no-brainer. And Armando Bacot was a no-brainer. Keep in mind, at that point, there was a lot of speculation about RJ versus Kerwin Walton. Remember, RJ had started some the previous year, but it was Kerwin Walton that got the majority of the starts because Carolina needed his shooting. And so there was legitimate questions coming into 21-22 season about RJ versus Kerwin. And there was also questions at the 4. I think most of us assumed it was either Brady Manick or Dawson Garcia, and we saw some back and forth there as well. But 3 of the 5 felt pretty locked in, and the other 2, it was like, it's going to be, it's this position, and it's either this guy or this guy, and it's that position, it's either that guy or that guy. And then you all remember, coming into the 2022-23 season off of the national runner-up, there was a foursome that was locked in, the Iron 5 minus Brady. So RJ Davis, Caleb Love, Leaky Black, Mondo. Boom, lock it in. It's those 4. And then I think the vast majority of people just assumed Pete Nance just slots right into where Brady left. So heading into 22-23, I feel like all 5 of them, we already had that locked in for the starting 5. And then last year, your 1 and your 5, those were the no-brainers. It's obviously RJ and it's obviously Armando. I think a lot of people assumed that Cormac and that Harrison were pretty inevitable to be part of the starting lineup. That was my take, at least. And then the only question was not if Elliot would start, but if he would start right away. Remember, for a long time in the summer, it was the assumption, and then there started to be some noise from within the program that maybe he wasn't quite ready to start day 1, and that proved to be true. Remember, Paxton Wojcik got the starting assignment for a couple games. But still, even then, it was really just that point guard position, and it was just a question of, is Elliot ready or not from day 1? This year, here's why it's so wild to me. Because in those other 3 years of Coach Davis, you had a couple slots that were open, but it was more defined. You knew what role, what position it was, and you knew it was either this guy or this guy. Now, you got RJ and you got Elliot. No brainers, no doubters. Everywhere you see, you got those 2 guys. But here's why this feels so wide open. You've got so many combinations possible at 3 through 5. Part of that is because of the variety of skill sets available. Part of that is the absence of a dominant, an obvious starting 5. Meaning that Carolina could play in a multitude of ways, which also leads to different starting lineup combinations. Right? You with me on that? That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of possibilities. And when you look back at those 3 examples I gave you, here's a couple of interesting things. Obviously, they all had RJ and Elliot, but here were 3 through 5. Ian J. Witt, Van Allen Lubin. Ian Cade, Van Allen Lubin. Ian Cade, J. Wash. What is the through line? They all had Ian Jackson in their starting lineups. Interesting that was the lone player that was consistent throughout. Also, of those 3 options, all 3 were different, and it was 5 different people vying for those 3 spots. Ian, both Jae'lyns, Van Allen Lubin, and Cade Tyson. So you have 3 or 5 guys vying for 3 spots, but we're not even accounting in that yet for Seth Trimble or Drake Powell, both of whom I think are in the mix for starting like at the 3, for example. I think Seth's experience gives him an opportunity there. I think he might be a little less likely, but in a Paxton Wojcik last year sort of way, right? I think that Zayden has an outside shot, but I think less so than the other front court guys. The only 2 I don't think, no, I'll say more definitively than that. The only 2 that aren't in the starting lineup conversation for me are James Brown and Tyjon Clyde. And again, that's what makes it so wide open. And also keep this in mind. We're just talking day 1 starters. We could see one quintet on opening day, a whole different lineup by the time you get to a whole different starting lineup, starting ACC play, and maybe a whole other starting lineup by the time the end of the regular season, right? Like there's so much possibility there. And also keep in mind, Coach Davis's predilection, for lack of role definition, we could see the starting lineup change based on opponent and what he thinks he needs. Now, also, not only are we not just talking about, not only day one starting lineup, but end of the regular season starting lineup and everything in between, we're also not talking about closing lineup here. Because if you talk to a lot of basketball minds, what will they tell you? Honestly, it's often less important who starts and more important who finishes. So that's one of the things we're going to be definitely watching for is who does Coach Davis trust in crunch time and down the stretch? And is it, as he sometimes does, just going with his gut of who's playing well? All of this to say, it would be silly if we had this whole conversation and I didn't give you my prediction today as we sit here on Friday, August 23rd. Because again, it could change tomorrow when I wake up on Saturday and go, no, I'm out on that. Okay, here's where I'm at right now. RJ Davis, Elliot Cadeau, no-brainer, slot him in. Jalen Washington is going to be the 5, in my opinion. I think he is going to be given that opportunity. He's worked so long, so hard, been part of the program. I think Coach Davis is going to reward that by giving him this, not giving him, allowing him to earn the starting 5 role, unless like Van Allen Lubin, for example, just takes it. And I don't know that that happens. Now, I also think that we're going to see kind of a small ball situation. So that said, I really, really think that it's not Jalen Withers or Zayden or, anyone else. I think it's Cade Tyson at the 4. And then because of the athleticism it brings, because we have questions about Carolina's defense, and so it's like, hey, let's just go score a bunch then. I think Ian gets the starting nod from day one at the 3. Unless, similar to Elliot, the coaching staff thinks maybe he's not quite ready day one, in which case maybe you go with Seth Trimble, right? But I do think that Ian's going to be ready. So as of today, RJ Davis, Elliot Cadeau, Ian Jackson, Cade Tyson, Jalen Washington. That's where I'm at on August 23rd. We'll see as things continue to go. Let me know where you're at on this conversation. Are you with me? Does that make sense? How wide open it seems and how varied the combinations and how they work together could go? It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see what rolls out. All right. That's some speculation on Carolina basketball. Now let's speculate on Carolina football. 7.5 wins is the over-under total that we're seeing at a lot of places for Carolina football this season. I'm taking the over, but the question is how far over? We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about this brand new mobile game, Ultimate College Football Head Coach, Locked On Tar Heels fans, you need to hear about this game that I think you're going to love. It's an amazing simulation where you get to step into the shoes of a college football head coach and lead your program to glory. Can you imagine actually being Mac Brown and just getting to do all this? So from recruiting players to hiring staff, to overseeing training camps, to handling scholarship stuff, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Can you handle that pressure? And here's what I really love about this game. You're responsible for calling plays while it's going on. So your strategy not only determines the success of your season, but shapes the future of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Man, how great is that? And of course, I got a special offer for all you Locked On Tar Heels family. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a boost for your program. So go take advantage of that. And to download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. I am still struggling to wrap my brain around the fact that today is Friday, and on next Friday's show, we're going to be unpacking Carolina's first football game of the season. Like, how is that here? I can't wait. You all have stuck with me like champs through the offseason. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so fun to stay together, but your patience is going to be rewarded and it's going to pay off because football's back and it's time to go. So, I had a really interesting conversation in Discord just a couple days ago about Carolina's record for this season. Our guy, our Drake ain't Canadian, one of my favorite names in all of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, asked me this. Isaac, over under 7.5 wins this season for the football team, where are you at? I unhesitantly take the over on that. I feel really good about that for a couple reasons. Now, initially, I said I'll go over in 8 to 9 wins, but again, feeling comfortable about that. But the thing is, I said that without really even looking at the schedule. So keep in mind, there are 12 games in the regular season. That's what I was saying, 8 to 9 regular season wins, by the way. So 12 regular season wins, 8 to 9 of them wins means 3 to 4 losses. Yes, I am very good at math. So our Drake ain't Canadian came back to me and said, all right, so I'm just curious then, what are your losses? Jokingly, immediately responded, Charlotte, NC Central, and James Madison. Although, to be fair, I guess I really shouldn't joke about James Madison because that's like this year's App State game. That's a tough one. Do not overlook it, especially with Duke looming the week after that. But all joking aside, I wanted to take this really seriously. So I wanted to relook at the schedule and see where I could find those 3 to 4 losses. And what I wanted to look for when I went back and looked at the schedule was, where are the 3 to 4 obvious losses? What stands out as like, not much of a path to victory in this one, if we're being honest. And so I started looking back through the schedule, and here's the thing. I could not find 3 to 4 obvious losses. The only game that I look at, and I'll phrase it that same way, and see a very difficult path to victory is the game at Florida State, right? Like it's going to be difficult. They are far and away voted in the ACC preseason poll as number 1. So let's chalk that one up as a loss. You good with that? All right, great. You didn't answer me, but I gave it my own answer. So there's that. And then beyond that, let's look at the other side of the equation. There are 2 obvious wins in this schedule to me, and that's hosting Charlotte and hosting NC Central. All due respect to both of those teams, Carolina should have their way, get a lot of guys, a lot of reps in that game. Like, don't run Omarion Hampton more than 10 to 15 times in those games. Save those legs for when you need them. But it's the other 9 games that fall somewhere in between. Here's those games in the order that they'll be played. At Minnesota versus James Madison. Trap game, red alert, because at Duke, the very next game, then hosting Pittsburgh, hosting Georgia Tech, at Virginia. Funny that Georgia Tech and Virginia fall back-to-back, given what happened last year. Those teams are both going to have North Carolina's undivided attention. I can guarantee you that. Then hosting Wake Forest, and then at Boston College, another red alert trap game. Why? Because the week after going to Boston College, Carolina hosts NC State. And we all know, like, that to me is the single most important game on the schedule. It is what it is. So of those 9 games, I don't look at any of them and say, nope, I don't see Carolina winning that game. Now, there's obviously games they could lose, like very well could go to Minnesota and lose that game next week. I have them winning it, but they could go to lose that game. And then the other bookend of the schedule, obviously, NC State has been a solid, it feels painful coming out, football team the last couple years. I know they lose some pieces, but they keep a lot of pieces. It's kind of similar to Carolina in that way. But it's not a game that Carolina can't win. They should win. It's at home. Got to take care of business in that one. And the way I can best describe this situation to you is I try to find these losses because, as I said, Florida State is the only obvious loss to me. So we look at that and say, like, so Isaac, are you telling me the Tar Heels, you are having them at 11-1 this year? Let me explain it this way. It's a classic Ken Pom or Bart Torvik situation. Come with me to basketball world really quick. If you look at Bart Torvik right now, he's already got projections for this upcoming season. He's got all 30 of Carolina's guaranteed opponents and games on there. The only 2 missing are the second and third games at Maui, where we just don't know the opponents yet. Of those 30 games, if you look at them individually, there are only 2 games in which Carolina is not favored. At Kansas, understandably, and at Duke, also kind of understandably. So That means Carolina's going to go 28-2 in basketball, right? Because they're favored in 28 of those 30 games. Wrong. You look down at the bottom of the page on Torvik's projections, and the projected record doesn't say 28-2. It says 22-8 overall, 14-6 in the ACC. Why? Because that doesn't make sense to me, Isaac. That math doesn't math. Here's the deal. While the Heels are favored in 28 of the 30 individual games, the reality of the odds of the totality of the schedule in whole, is different than the odds of game by game. So if I just said, hey, you've got to go play this team this one game, Carolina's favored 1-0, sure. But if I said to you, hey, here's this package of 12 games, you're favored in 11 of them. Not saying that Carolina will be. I'm just saying hypothetically, you're favored in 11 of them, so you're going to be 11-1. That's not the reality of how things work out. So that's why the math happens that way. So the same theory applies here to football that I'm talking about with basketball. Even though Carolina's only the underdog in 2 of those games, that doesn't mean they're only going to lose those 2 when you look at the whole package of a schedule. So while I'm struggling to find other losses beyond Florida State, the reality of an 11-1 record, quite frankly, this, is highly improbable. Again, at Minnesota is going to be tough. NC State, that's always going to be a brawl. Going to Duke, obviously, is difficult. Going to Boston College in November is no fun. I mean, that could be a loss. And that's what makes this prediction effort difficult. But here's something that helps Carolina's cause. You look at who's on the schedule, and it makes you remember who's not on the schedule. Clemson, who was second in the ACC preseason media poll. Miami, who was voted third, maybe erroneously so, but whatever. Louisville voted fifth. Virginia Tech, sixth. SMU, seventh. Notre Dame's not on there. Syracuse is not on there. Also, not only does Carolina not play the 2 new Bay Area schools, Stanford and Cal, not only do they not play them, they don't have to go out there and make that trip. And that is a big factor. So Carolina dodges a scheduling bullet, because of the top 7 ACC preseason media poll teams, they're only playing 2 of them, Florida State and NC State. The other 5, not on the schedule. Clemson, Miami, Louisville, Virginia Tech, SMU. That's nice. All that said, all that kind of schedule theory, give me 9-3 for the regular season. And I'm not even going to try to pick out those other 2 games beyond Florida State because it's random. But yet again, definitely give me over the 7.5 total. I feel very confident about that, even though there's no Drake Maye around. Why? Because Mac Brown's the coach. You got a better defensive coaching staff in. I know you lose Tez Walker, but outside of that, your receiving core is in good position. Omarion Hampton is still your main running back, and you got, I think, a good support behind him. Yes, the O-line has a lot of questions, but it should be better. So all around, even though you lose Drake, the sum of the parts could come together to make a strong season. And again, it's not the world's strongest schedule, so there's possibilities all over that. All right, let's go back to basketball now. We're set for the Jumpman Invitational. Got more information on that on Thursday. But here's my question. Is Jumpman going to keep going after this year? We'll talk about that and a couple other things all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, going to live events is the absolute best, whether it's music or theater or comedy, or now that sports are finally back, man, go to a college football game. And I'm looking forward to making new memories this college sports season. Well, great news. When you're getting tickets for this year, Game Time has a brand new feature for you called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than it already was with Game Time. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through the throng of thousands of tickets. We've been talking about Carolina at Minnesota. How about this? Cheapest ticket I can find. I'm looking in real time right now because I don't want you to doubt me. Cheapest ticket, $25 each, upper corner. So it's not a great seat, but you can get in the door for $25. Or when I zoom in, I'm right behind Carolina's bench, row 5 at about the 30-yard line. for $81 each, man. Or just a couple rows back from that. What is that? Row 10 for $79 on the other 30. I mean, great deals. Get to this game, man. Don't delay. Get your tickets on Game Time right now. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order at Game Time. Think about the ticket prices we just said. You get in for so cheap. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. On Thursday, ESPN released 11 different MTE events that are coming up this season. Most of them are feast week things surrounding Thanksgiving, but also included in that allowed us then to get the specific details of the Jumpman Invitational in its third year. We already knew the dates and opponents, but we just got a little bit more detail surrounding it all. And so that's good news here. So let me share those with you. This event takes place on Tuesday, December 17th and Wednesday, December 18th. It's the same 4 teams that it's been the first 2 years: North Carolina, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Florida, all Jumpman schools. So kicking off this whole event, the first game, North Carolina men against Florida, the only opponent the Tar Heels have not played yet in this event, which, by the way, Carolina is undefeated in so far, having beaten Oklahoma last year, who was undefeated at that point, and obviously Michigan in that first year. So North Carolina, Florida, this game will be at 7 Eastern on ESPN. And then after that, the nightcap on night 1 on Tuesday is Michigan versus Oklahoma women. That's at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. And then on Wednesday night, we kind of flip-flop the gender order. We start with the Tar Heels versus the Gators in the women's game. That one's at 6:30 ESPN or 6:30 Eastern on ESPNU. And then the nightcap to wrap it all up, Michigan men versus Oklahoma men. Oklahoma's going to be down, or we expect them to be down this year. And I think Michigan's going to be back up a little bit with Dusty Maye coming in. So that game will be 9 Eastern on ESPN2. So as I said, Carolina undefeated in this event, beat Michigan. It was 80-76 in 2022, and then 81-69 over Oklahoma last year. The question is, this is the last year of the round robin. I'm very curious to see if this event continues. I'm also very curious to see if it continues, what are they going to do with the teams? Because now that Oklahoma's in the SEC, they and Florida can't be in this event together because they can't play each other in it because of the conference stuff. So we're going to keep our eyes on that. We'll see what happens. You just don't know. Also, speaking of Carolina and special events, for the non-conference season, CBS Sports Classic tickets went on sale yesterday for Carolina's matchup against UCLA on December 21st at MSG. What a fun way to spend the weekend before Christmas, hanging out in New York City, going to watch some great basketball. Carolina, UCLA at 3 p.m. Eastern, followed by Kentucky and Ohio State at 5:30 Eastern. That's the Aaron Bradshaw game. Remember, he played at Kentucky last year and now is at Ohio State. Obviously, that'll all be on CBS because it's the CBS Sports Classic. So make sure you go get your tickets for that. You can just grab them up at Ticketmaster or at msg.com. All right, wrapping up the show today with our first weekend whip around of the school year, because there are multiple teams that are in action this weekend. It's all in one sport, but hey, I'm just a giddy to get it going. So both soccer teams right now ranked in the top 6 nationally. Both of them played Thursday. Both play again on Sunday. Let's start with the women, because they had a big time matchup on Thursday at home at Dorrance Field against number 16, the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Tar Heels squeak out a 4-3 victory. And this is the home opener, though they are now 3-0 on the season, but the first 2 had been on the road. So they returned to Dorrance Field for their home opener. And by the way, they are now all time at home in the home opener. You ready for this? 42-2-2. So have only lost twice at home ever in their home opener. That's just silly in 46 games, 46 matches. So Olivia Thomas, her first ever brace, that's 2 goals. She scored UNC's second and third goals. And then there was a Bella blast to get that 4th goal, which ended up being the game winner. Georgia scores with about 30 seconds left, but no time for the equalizer. Congrats to the ladies. They are at home again on Sunday against Arizona. That will be at noon on ACC Network. As for the men, they also started off the season on the road. On Thursday night was their season opener down in Birmingham, Alabama against UAB. What's up, Will Shaver? Just thought about that. And the men win 1-0, got a late goal, held on, nothing else happened. So open up the season 1-0-0. They're also back in action on Sunday. That's against Cal Baptist on ACC Network, 7:30 Eastern time. So both soccer teams at home on Sunday. The only other action this weekend is some scrimmages. The volleyball team, field hockey team has some scrimmage action going on, but nothing yet. We'll kick off in the very near future, and then things are going to be rolling, baby. We got football next Thursday, y'all. So excited. All right, gang. If you haven't subscribed to the show, video and audio, make sure you do that so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. Right on YouTube. If you're watching, just click subscribe. If you're listening, hit subscribe right there in whatever app you listen to podcasts in. Speaking of joining something, if you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, you are missing out. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's absolutely free to join, and the link is in the show notes. Also, I have a brand new opportunity coming up for you very soon. You're going to be able to join the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, where you have direct access to me, to be able to text me, and have access to all my stats and records and Carolina data that I keep. And you know it's good stuff because you've seen it before. So stay tuned for that. More information coming up very, 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 very soon. Can't wait to share that opportunity with you. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back together again on Monday. Oh, baby, I can't wait. But until then, peace.